Sports Bias right here on FanDuel TV. Of course, for our friends on the Ringer Gambling Show, the week before Thanksgiving 2024. Hard to believe. Let's welcome in Joe House, Raheem Palmer, JJ John Jastremski, as we have a lot of NFL games to break down. There are a lot of landmines that we are going to have to navigate with a lot of big spreads and some icky, disgusting, grotesque games. House, I'm going to start you with a fun one right out of the gate because the news over the last 48 to 72 hours in the NFL has centered around two of the most grotesque and in many ways dysfunctional football teams that the sport has to offer. Who would you be more willing to bet on the final 6 or 7 weeks of the year? Is it the Giants, who have just sent Daniel Jones to witness protection because they don't want him to get hurt, and they put him in bubble wrap, and it will be Tommy DeVito and his chicken cutlets starting at quarterback Sunday against the Bucs and starting the remainder of the year? Or I give you option B. It'll be the Jets, who are 3-8, fired the head coach. They fired their general manager. There was a report in The Athletic yesterday that apparently Woody Johnson wanted Aaron Rodgers benched after the Denver game in week 4. So the answer really is none of the above. But bigger picture here, who is more of a red flag for you the rest of this season? The Giants or the Jets? That's the fun way we're approaching this.
That is disgusting. That's not any fun. The problem is that they have the exact same incentives in front of them, which is to be as bad as possible to land a draft pick in this upcoming NFL draft to find their quarterback of the future, because neither one of those teams has a viable quarterback. The Jets have a viable backup. Tyrod's fine, but he's not the guy that they're going to, build the team around. So do I have to choose? If I have to choose one, I'll choose the Jets because there's a couple I don't know. I can't choose. But
you're wishy-washy either way. Raheem, I want to phrase it this way to you. The books in the market with the Jets have been off on this team all season. You hit on this last week when you took the Indianapolis Colts. You told me, hey, this number is wrong. This number is off. The Jets are off this week. They're going to come back from their bye. They're going to get Seattle. Then they're going to play Miami. Then they got a bunch of other games moving forward. Do you think we are finally going to get a market correction from the books? Because the reason I'm asking that question, Raheem, and I think it's a fair one, we didn't have it last week and they were a 3-7 team.
No, we're still not going to have one because they're taking on the Seattle Seahawks next week and they're laying 1.5.
That's outrageous. I don't care if Seattle has their problems. I don't care if they're going to the East Coast. Raheem, that is an outrageous line. That's outrageous.
And here's the crazy thing. On the hook with myself and Anthony DeBundo, I did look ahead lines during week 11 for week 13. Originally, that line was Jets minus 4.5. And
that's the game against Seattle. I just want to make sure we have the right game.
That's the game against Seattle. Originally, That line was Jets minus 4.5. The Jets lost last week. The Seahawks won last week. And now that line is Jets minus 1.5. Now, when I pull up my model, and this is using priors, I have the Seattle Seahawks minus 1.77 on the road against the Jets. So that tells you that there still hasn't been an adjustment. Now, if the Seattle Seahawks go out there and beat the Arizona Cardinals this week, you'll see them likely close as a favorite. But right now, on the look-ahead line for Week 13, the Seattle Seahawks are underdogs against the New York Jets.
And listen, when you hear reports coming out of Jetland that guys are already checked out midway through the year, how do you think they're going to be feeling after a GM and a coach are fired? They're going through a bye week. You think they're going to come back, hey, let's go crack skulls and play football, balls to the wall over the final 7 weeks of the year? Don't see it. I'm glad we brought this up. There's some fading opportunities.
There's one thing. There's one caveat on that. And
yes.
I think there's one thing that we cannot forget is that a lot of these guys have incentives in their contracts. And there's guys playing for incentives. And then a lot of these guys are still playing for their place in the NFL. So, we mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, maybe the Chicago Bears quitting on their coach. Guys might quit for 1 or 2 weeks, But at the end of the day, there's guys fighting for their place and their right to stay in the NFL, and there's guys fighting for those incentives and contracts. So you definitely want to keep that in mind when you handicap these games and you mention, oh, these guys are quitting, because some of these guys are still out there playing.
So, whole lot of dysfunction, whole lot of disaster with the Jets and the Giants. We had that on Monday night. You know what's funny, House? The Texan Cowboy game, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but we haven't been on since. Here was my main takeaway. You guys can weigh in. I thought the Texans were awful on Monday. Absolutely, positively awful. I thought they did everything imaginable to allow Dallas to try to stay in that game, and Dallas just is not any good, and they're incompetent, and they couldn't take it. I know the Texans are going to win the division. I know they have a gaudy record within the AFC South. House, they won the game. They covered the game. I came away saying, man, that team stinks. They got serious problems.
Well, again, we anticipated in our handicap of that game that the return of Nico Collins was going to be potentially, transformative for that offense. I think what you're saying, JJ, if we tried to pin it on one player, CJ Stroud doesn't look the same as he looked last year. That's my takeaway. And they schemed up a good game plan. And at the end of the day, you look at the game that Joe Mixon had, that Joe Mixon, Nico Collins combo makes them formidable. They're going to be, they got all of their AFC South victories under their belt. And if they can get that defense, because of the one-dimension, half-dimension offense that the Cowboys present, they were able to really start pinning their ears back and get after poor Cooper Rush. I thought at some point, maybe even halftime, Dallas might put Trey Lance in because he could at least try and run away from them boys coming after him. But it's a very hard measuring stick to go from that Dallas game. First game for Houston with their full complement on offense. I'm not using that as a referendum on where Houston is headed, but I do take your point. CJ did not look right to me, Dream.
For whatever reason, this offense is just strange to me, and it just feels like all year long, it feels like they're underachieving. And, I'm going to have a tough time laying points with this Houston Texans team in the future with what I've seen thus far. I mean, so I agree with you guys 100%. I don't like this Texans team at all.
And they're going to have two cupcakes the next 2 weeks. They got the Titans, who have covered one game all season against Snoop Huntley and the Dolphins on Monday night. Other than that, they have not covered a game all year. Then they go to Jacksonville. So there's a very good chance we're looking at the Texans as a 9-4 football team. But listen to these three of these last four games down the stretch. They're going to be hosting Miami, who's going to be fighting for their lives. They're going to desperately need the game. Then they go to Arrowhead. Then they host the Ravens, who are going to need the game. I think there are some opportunities down the road here to put this in a memory bank that we may be able to fade the Houston Texans in week 15, in week 16, in week 17, if this is going to be the same sort of Texan team that we're seeing. Because offensively, to House's point, Stroud has not been as good. And I don't know what Slowick's doing. Game plan was a little better against Dallas, but he's not had a great year as well. Okay. I want to get to some happier, brighter, positive storylines. I started us on a terrible, terrible note with the two New York football teams. CJ Stroud has been a downer. Let's get to an upper. Who right now, Raheem, is Josh Allen's biggest threat to win the MVP? I've been thinking about this week because I kind of feel that win on Sunday against Mahomes doesn't mean anything for January, but for the regular season, it kind of drums up a narrative, kind of gets momentum going in your direction. The fourth down run, the idea that McDermott trusted him. And I think there's voter fatigue for Lamar Jackson. And Lamar didn't have a great game against the Steelers. So he goes down in that MVP sort of, horse race, if you will. I think Allen's the front runner to win the award. I think he's going to win the award as long as Buffalo, wins their 12 games and he plays well and does his thing. If anybody is going to take it from him, who's the guy that's going to take it from him? Do you have anybody right now? Would you say it's Jackson? Would you say it's Goff? Who's the guy that's taking it from him?
It's actually Lamar Jackson.
Because statistically speaking, the numbers are there.
Yeah, the numbers are just they're so incredible that if you look over the next couple of weeks, he has the Chargers, he has the Eagles, he has the Giants, he has the Steelers, he has the Texans, and he has the Browns. If the Ravens go on a run, and he maintains his production that he has thus far. And then if you look at the Bills, they got the 49ers, the Rams, the Lions, the Patriots twice, and then the Jets. If the Bills slip any, it's just like when you look statistically, number for number, Lamar Jackson just has the better number, and he won head to head. So there's a reason why he's still just plus 200 despite, some of those big losses. Now, if you're looking for a wild card, it's definitely Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts hasn't particularly played well, but this Eagles team has just been so dominant that if he can put, some stats together, I know he's getting the touchdowns. He's probably the greatest touchdown vulture of all time. But if he puts some stats together outside of that, the 17-1 might have a little bit of value. I'm not necessarily going to get there and place that bet now, but I think if he can do that, then I think you'll see this number shoot down. I think for Jared Goff, I think he just has the reputation that the rest of his team is playing so well, and he has a solid running game that I don't see him ever getting it. But it's definitely Lamar Jackson on the lower end, and then Jalen Hurts on the higher end.
I want to ask you guys, are we missing a golden opportunity here? Patrick Mahomes is 12-1 on the FanDuel Sportsbook right this second to win an MVP, an otherwise undefeated team until a game that we, handicapped as a good opportunity for the Bills. And this Chiefs offense is about to get healthy again. He's going to get his weapons back. Pacheco is supposed to be back soon. They got the receiver help in place. They put Xavier Worthy to work. One of my favorite bets of our Ringer pregame show was Worthy over 40 yards in receptions, plus 230. Big fat winner for everybody that watches the Ringer pregame show. Trying to give out some winners. But I think if that offense gets cooking because these weapons come back, the defense took a hit. The cornerback that got injured, it hasn't been the same. The pass defense has been diminished. It's still a great run defense, but I'm not pulling the gentleman's name. Since that injury, I think it's a bit of different pass defense. They haven't really recovered. So if the Chiefs go on another tear, and they're certainly going to handle their business this week against the Panthers, it seems like, we'll knock on wood, then Mahomes at 12-1. Like, when are we going to get that price again?
You're not, but from what I've seen this year, Raheem, statistically speaking, I just think it's too much of an uphill climb for Mahomes to get there. I know it's Mahomes. I know what you're saying, House. It's 12-1. It's an insane number. I think the number being 12-1 tells you a lot, Raheem. That's the way I read into it. I just think he has too much now to overcome to go and eclipse those other two guys to get the award. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you look at him, he's 12th in passing yards. Where is he in TDs? I mean, he's 10th in TDs. Like, that right there, it kind of puts him behind the 8 ball. It's just too many guys playing better than him. So it's going to be tough. So, but you know what? He plays the Carolina Panthers this week. And
stand up those stats a little bit.
This is a great stat padding opportunity for Mahomes to get his numbers up. And if he gets his numbers up, they blow this team out. Maybe he throws 4 or 5 touchdown passes. Maybe this line drops. So maybe House is right.
Got a lot more coming your way. East Coast Bias getting you ready for the Sunday slate of NFL action. Before we do that, we have a Thursday night game to break down. It will be the red-hot Pittsburgh Steelers, the lowly Cleveland Browns. Hold your nose potential bet that one of us might be making. We'll dive into that. We'll try to figure out the best ways to break down winners your way for this Thursday night game. East Coast Bias Boys coming right back. Welcome back. We got a Thursday night game that looked far more appetizing and far more juicy at the start of the season. Pittsburgh Steelers guys are red hot. They're 8-2 on the year. They did not necessarily play a great offensive game against the Ravens on Sunday. Kicked a gazillion field goals. Did enough defensively to hold down Lamar Jackson. One couple of big turnovers, and they're 8-2, and they're feeling their oats. They take on a 2-8 Brown team that just lost to the Saints last week. Missed a bunch of field goals. The whole full-fledged Jameis Winston experience. Raheem, we know the deal with Tomlin. He's great in these spots where he's an underdog. When he's a favorite, not as good. You got a letdown opportunity here in a big-time way. I know the Steelers have been a better team. I know this game on paper should be an absolute rout. Except they're only giving us 3.5. It stinks to high heavens. I hate the spot for the Steelers. Can see a little kitchen sink type of spot for the Brownies. I can't come on and say in good faith, I love a 2-8 team getting only 3.5 points. I can't be banging my chest like I'm McConaughey in The Wolf of Wall Street, but you want to pick on Thursday Night Football? I'm giving you one, buddy. I like Cleveland plus the points. Am I insane?
So on the surface, I don't think you're insane. But based on what I saw last week with the Cleveland Browns, I think you were insane. Because I saw a team, and I know I mentioned this earlier, that guys don't necessarily quit. I saw a team that quit. I saw a team that gave up 8.6 yards per pass, 8.2 yards per play. They allowed so many explosive plays in that game. And what is the one thing that the Pittsburgh Steelers do well? Russell Wilson throws that deep ball. Now, the problem with this game is that you're looking at a game with a 70% chance of precipitation, and you're looking at 25 to 35 mile per hour winds. So there's a reason why we saw this total go from an opener of 38.5 to 36.5. Now, if we don't get that precipitation, I think that changes everything. But right now, you kind of have to wait on this weather. Now, if you ask me, the Steelers, their offense still leaves a lot to be desired, because you watch them against the Ravens, and the Ravens defense, which, has really struggled this year, they only scored 18 points. And Wilson only completed 1 of 8 attempts for -1 yards and an interception and 4 sacks when pressured. And I think Cleveland should be able to get some pressure. And in the red zone, they've really struggled. Where I'm at with this game is that if there's no snow and the wind isn't as good as it, isn't as high as what we think it is, right now on FanDuel Sportsbook, you can get Chris Boswell, Steelers field goal kicker, over 6.5 kicking points. That's where I want to head for this game.
Interesting. Now, I want to get your take on this, House. Is there any fear factor of this, Raheem? You mentioned a wind. They're talking about winds that maybe could gust as high as 40 miles an hour. Does that scare you from a kicking prop?
Oh yeah,
standpoint?
without a doubt. I'm just saying, if the wind isn't what they think it is, if it's not, if it's not above 15, if it's below 15 miles per hour, give me that kicking prop all day, because I think there's going to be value on betting the over after everybody came in on the under. So, and I'm looking at the Steelers. I don't see them as a great red zone team. I feel like they're a team who relies on their kicker. They play good defense. This is my like different way of playing the over without playing the over, if that makes sense.
I just have to share this. The Pittsburgh Steelers have never won a road divisional Thursday night football game. They are 0-7 all time and 0-5 under Mike Tomlin.
Wow.
In general, Mike Tomlin, 2-8 on the road on Thursday night football. And we know, JJ set it up, the splits are prominent between the Pittsburgh Steelers as an underdog, just like the way we enjoyed them on Sunday with a winning underdog pick, versus when the Pittsburgh Steelers are a favorite. And as a favorite of more than 3 points against a division rival, the numbers are not favorable for Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Dream's point is the right point. We have to be cautious with this Cleveland Browns team because they have checked out. But this is a division rival with the history of the AFC North. I think Cleveland, you can pardon them for not getting up for the New Orleans Saints. They will be up for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They will be up for this island game, Thursday night football. All eyes on them the week before Thanksgiving. I like the Browns getting the points. I like the Browns even better in a tease position from 3.5 up to 9.5. They beat the Ravens. Remember, they went to Jameis Winston and beat the Ravens outright. I think the Browns are live as a dog in this game.
House, I'll take it a step further. You take the Browns on the money line, or you're not going near it?
Oh, I will. I definitely will. I'm not. It's not a big number. This isn't a all in. Honey, check the mortgage number. But if I like the points, I do think the weather's going to play. That works in favor of the Browns. That doesn't help the Steelers, this bad weather aspect of it, because it neutralizes the defense a little bit, in my humble estimation. And Jameis will throw if he can throw. He has no worries about it. I like the idea of Jameis throwing better than I like the idea of Russell Wilson throwing if it's bad weather. So I'm going to go ahead and do it all across the board with the Browns. I hate to do it, but he got to do it.
Your balls are just bigger than mine right now, because I have PTSD for what I saw in that Saints game. It just was so bad that I just could not jump on the Browns here. And I know you guys are making the right play. All the sharp money is going to be on the Browns, but I'm scared. I'm sorry.
I understand that, Raheem. Now, I do want to hit on the total in this game. And I feel like getting involved in the total is even more dangerous potentially than getting involved in the spread, because if we have weather that is as bad as they are projecting, then it might be borderline impossible to go and score points. If the weather ends up being much better than anticipated, then all of a sudden you have serious value in taking the total. Is there any piece of advice, Raheem? Because I don't think either one of us, or any of us, I should say, is going to be betting the total in this game. I'm not going anywhere near it. You kind of made your point with the Boswell kicking prop type of deal. Is there any way you would look to deal with the total? Is it just monitoring the weather forecast and acting accordingly? How do you handle that if you want to bet the over-under?
Yeah, I think you need to look. I mean, a lot of people just went out and grabbed the under right away. You got two divisional teams. You got the Steelers. You got the Browns. Like, a lot of times, Pittsburgh, they play towards the under in these divisional games. And then when you look at the weather, you just jump out ahead of it and try to grab the number before it moves. But it's already moved so much to where it's like, all right, what point is the low point? So I think what you do now at this point in time, you guys going to be watching this Thursday morning. I think you wait towards close to the game time, see what the weather is, see where the total has dropped. If it drops too far low, maybe 36, maybe 35, maybe you go over. Maybe you play that kicking prop like I suggested. If not, if it stays at a 38 or so, maybe you play the under. So it's all about the number and it's just the conditions. So you just need to monitor them.
And from a prop standpoint, I'd be all aboard the George Pickens prop train, but I am kind of treading lightly because of that bad weather and those bad winds that we're talking about. So that's something I'm going to be keeping in mind as we get closer and closer to kickoff, because George Pickens has found it, especially when it comes to the deep ball with Russell Wilson. So if conditions are all right, might be able to go and make some plays. All right, we go from the Browns and the Steelers to the rest of the card across the board in Week 11. Well, the Niners finally show up and, dare I say, get their season on track in Lambeau. Playoff rematch from a game we saw in the divisional round. Rams, we feeling that they are alive Sunday night against the Philadelphia Eagles. Feels like a lot of these games are backloaded if you look at this particular schedule. We'll dive into that. Got a lot of games to get to. Hopefully a lot of winners coming your way. East Coast Bias Boys, we're coming right back. All right, boys, welcome back. Let's get right to the marquee game of the Sunday slate. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, House. The games are not spectacular. We do not have a repeat of last Sunday. We had the Ravens and the Steelers, and you had the Bills and the Chiefs, and you had the Chargers and the Bengals. Not as good a card, but that doesn't mean it can't be profitable. Doesn't mean we can't have some juicy games along the way. Green Bay laying 2.5 against San Francisco, to me, is a very fascinating line, because if there's a team that is going to be more desperate going into the game, it's without question San Francisco, coming off that heartbreaking, gut-wrenching loss they had to Seattle. The Packers really should have lost last week, if we're being honest, to the Chicago Bears, got away with one, and added another win. I'm having a really hard time with this game, and I'm having a hard time because, to me, the Packers are not as good as their record, and I don't know where to feel and where to stand with San Francisco, who clearly is not as good as they were a year ago or in years past. I still think there's a different level they can get to as a group. I'll defer on this one. I'm kicking it to you guys. Right now, where do we stand on Niners? Packers, 2.5 is the number.
So I'm worried. And this would be a spot where I would love to jump on San Francisco. I think the number in favor of Green Bay is a kind of hedge because the news reports are that Purdy is hurt. There's a shoulder injury, and we know that Bosa. I don't know if they've declared him out yet, but there's no way we can see him playing based on the status that came out of Sunday. So if Bosa is out and Purdy is limited, I'm honestly concerned that Purdy's going to play at all, in which case this is going to go all the way up to, I don't know, Dream, what, 4.5? Green Bay by something much bigger than the 2.5. So now it's a stay away because we don't know. Purdy is a tough dude. I think it would be a great spot to be on Green Bay. I think it's right to be, on San Francisco. I think it's right to be skeptical of Green Bay. I'm still waiting. Other than the enormous turnover generation that they've had on defense, I don't think we've really seen them. It's not what I would call a tough defense. And I'm still, looking for opportunities to fade Green Bay. Love, again, still not in the form that we saw the latter half of last season, but with the injury concerns with San Francisco, Dream, it's a stay away from me.
I hate both of these teams. Like, I wish it was possible that they were playing other opponents so I could bet against both of them. And, the interesting thing about both of these teams is that if you look at red zone touchdown percentage, the 49ers are 26. They're only converting 48% of their 41 red zone attempts. Guess who's 27th? The Green Bay Packers. They're converting 48% of their 39 red zone trips. So both of these teams, they can get into the red zone and then they can't punch it in. So when you have that, you have all of these situations where both of these teams continue to stall out. And I think the equalizer here is home field advantage, the fact that Nick Bosa is hurt. And we saw when Nick Bosa went out of that game last week against the Seattle Seahawks, Geno Smith took over. So if they're not generating a pass rush, they're in trouble against Jordan Love and this Packers team. And Jordan Love hasn't been particularly well. House, he hit on the key point that Jordan Love hasn't been the quarterback that we saw in the second half of last season. So I think you need to be looking Packers or pass at this point in time, especially when you look at the Brock Purdy injury. But the market has that priced in already. So that's where I would be looking. But me personally, I'm not betting on any of these teams. But I will say there's a reason. Right now, you look at the San Francisco 49ers. They are 5-5. They're tied for second place in the NFC West, which is basically last place because everybody's tied except for the Arizona Cardinals. There's a reason why on FanDuel Sportsbook, they're minus 210 to miss the postseason.
And the schedule is brutal for San Francisco. Absolutely brutal. They have this game coming up. They have a trip to Buffalo coming up. They have a trip to Miami coming up. They play the Lions later on this year. There are a lot of treacherous games for San Francisco to the point where, guys, I remember back in week 4, week 5, whatever it was a Thursday night game against Seattle, the one in Seattle. Took the Niners at even money to win the division. I felt great about it until I watched that Sunday game against Seattle. The way I see things now, I don't feel particularly good about San Francisco getting it back on track to go and win this division. Now, we're going to stay in the
Let me add one thing before we move on.
Sure.
If you like San Francisco in this game,
bet them to win the division.
No. If you like San Francisco in this game, you could take the Green Bay Packers plus 360, plus 350 or so on FanDuel Sportsbook to miss the postseason because this is kind of like a de facto playoff game. Whoever loses this game is in trouble because both of these two teams are chasing wild card spots. Now, I know San Francisco can actually win their division, but the way it's going right now with them losing all of their divisional games, this is a wild card playoff game.
Fascinating angle, and you're not wrong about that because the Lions are going to win the North, and the tiebreakers for San Francisco are not advantageous. They lost to Arizona already. They split with Seattle, and they lost to the Los Angeles Rams. So it's going to require a whole lot of maneuvering and a whole lot of real good football for the Niners to win a division. You might be onto something there, Raheem. Let's stay in the NFC West. That's going to be the focus here. Sunday night, we got one team that's playing in the NFC West, Raheem. Philadelphia Eagles are red hot. They're 8-2. They have solved a whole lot of the problems that were definitely plaguing them in the early going of the year. The defense has gotten on track. Saquon has been great. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are back. You got to lay a small number with the Eagles against a 5-5 Ram team that, remember, 2 weeks ago on Monday night, lost to the Miami Dolphins, responded with a big Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp offensive explosion against the Patriots. And my lean on this game, despite Philadelphia being as hot as they are, Dream, I think the Rams are going to win. I think McVay is going to have the A-plus game plan ready to go. I think Stafford is going to outperform Jalen Hurts. And I think the Eagles, simply put, are due to lose one here. I'm a believer in that. I could be dead wrong. I know the Eagles are playing great. I like the Rams here. I think the Rams win outright.
Wow. I did not expect you to say that. I'm stunned.
And I know, you know me, I have not exactly been a big Ram guy this year. I think this is a big Ram spot. I just do. I don't like this spot for the Eagles. I don't.
I like the Eagles. So these two teams played last year in Los Angeles. That line was 4. How do we get to 2.5 with a worse Rams team and no Aaron Donald? I can't make sense of it.
Yeah, my issue with the game is, you know, the handicap in support of the Rams is the Rams with their weapons. I feel like we keep waiting. When are we going to see that game? When's the bust out game where we see Puka and Cooper and Kyron Williams when they're all on the same page and Matthew Stafford is firing? We haven't really seen it, to me, since, you know, the latter half of that first game loss to the Detroit Lions at the beginning of the season. Like, I mean, they get it in fits and starts, but they had every opportunity to put away that Patriots team. And I'll be goddamned if I wasn't a little bit nervous with Drake May with the football and the opportunity to drive down the field and potentially score against that Rams defense at the end of the game. That game should not have been as close as it was, and it's not exactly like that New England defense across the metrics and across the eye test is a formidable defense. It's not like a Tennessee situation where you can see certain aspects of the unit, you know, shutting down certain aspects of what another team wants to do. That Patriots defense is trash. And we didn't see that. We didn't see the Rams go leverage that. So I, under other kinds of circumstances, would like the case for the Rams. I don't like them coming back cross country from New England with this Eagles team on extra rest, having played against Washington. I think it's a good spot. It's a fair number and a fair spot for the Eagles.
Well, heads up action on this. I like it. Seems like you guys are aligned with Philadelphia. I'm just telling you, there are certain situations where a team is due for a little humbling. I feel like the Eagles, that game against Washington, they didn't put the game away.
But Washington always plays them tough.
They do. And listen, they're a solid team. Washington maybe is on their way to the playoffs this year. I just don't think that margin of victory, House, was indicative on how that game was going for 3.5 quarters. You know what I mean? And every now and again, you do.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. You could get a Sirianni clunker. Don't be surprised if this is a Sirianni clunker. Just remember I said that. All right, we're on record. Now, let's get to the other big game in the NFC West. That's the theme here, kicking off this first slate of picks. House, what a game. Arizona off their bye. They smoked the Jets the last time we saw them. Seattle at home, coming off their win of the year and stunning the San Francisco 49ers. You have a line that has the Arizona Cardinals favored by 1.5. Have fun with this one, House. Cards, Seahawks. What do we think?
So I liked it so much more when the Seahawks were favored, which was a couple days this week. There was a minute there where the Seahawks were favored by 1. I was like, let me get my tees in. Got to get my tees in. Then the Arizona plus 7, taking them from +1 up to -7 was one of my favorite plays of the week. It's flipped over to Arizona, and I think Arizona is properly favored, to be honest, notwithstanding the fact that this is a road game for them. We are in a Jekyll and Hyde position with this Seattle team, and it really boils down to that offensive line. If that offensive line gives Geno any time at all, then Geno's a magician. Geno can handle it. Geno went right down the field against San Francisco with a game-winning touchdown drive. But who knows whether or not that Seattle offensive line will be up to the challenge and up to the task. Jonathan Gannon's been in his bag all season long. You got to tip your cap. Gannon should be in the running for Coach of the Year. I know he's in the top 5. He deserves it. Arizona was not forecasted to be anything but a garbage defense. They've been a little bit better than that, Dream. So I'm leaning towards Arizona as the team coming off the bye week because I just don't trust the Seattle offensive line. It's that simple.
I'm taking Seattle. And when I look at the Arizona Cardinals, I know they've won 4 straight games, but look at who they beat and when they beat them. So they beat the Chargers. And the Chargers at the time, they truly haven't been tested. I know they went out there and beat the Cincinnati Bengals. The offense has improved since then. But that was a very, very close game in which, required them, to pull off a game-winning touchdown. Then you beat the Miami Dolphins in a game in which, Tua just came back. And they were lucky to win that one. But the last 2 games came against the Chicago Bears, who we know they've had a season full of turmoil, and they had the Hail Mary, and they just weren't the same. And then they beat the New York Jets. Now you go on bye, and a lot of people could say, well, the bye helps you out. But when you have a 4-game winning streak, the last thing you want is to take a break and, to have a vacation and have guys go home to their wives and to have guys go on vacation and party and do whatever they do. And now you got to come back and face a divisional opponent who is hungry. And it feels like their defense is slowly starting to get together because they limited the San Francisco 49ers in ways that they've never done during the Brock Purdy era. I mean, Brock Purdy, before that game, he's beat them by an average of 15 points per game. And, Abe Lucas is back on the offensive line. They were able to protect a little bit last week. So if you ask me, I mark these 2 teams, they're evenly matched. But Seattle is at home. So Seattle with that 12th man, I don't know how the Arizona Cardinals can be favored on the road here in this spot. Now, these 2 teams, interestingly enough, there's a sandwich spot because the Seahawks play them on Sunday, then they both go play another team, and then they go play again in Arizona the following week. So I'm going to take Seattle here. Maybe Arizona gets the second one, but Seattle having home field advantage, I got to take them here in this spot.
I'm taking them as well, Raheem. I don't love it because there are concerns about that Seattle offensive line that are a little frightening. But I think the return of DK Metcalf is a game changer for them. I think Seattle is a totally different offensive team when you put Metcalf back in the mix. And I think the bye actually is a negative here for Arizona. To your point, they're humming. They're firing on all cylinders. Everybody feeling great about things after the back-to-back dominant wins. I could see a little rust going into this game. So I'll break the tie by a smidge. I'll go with Seattle. We got a lot more coming your way. Some NBA Cup thoughts, some thoughts on the Celtic Cav game from the other night. We got our best bets. All of that still to come. All right, boys. NBA Cup obviously in full swing. House, I was really into this Cavs-Celtic game. I gave out the Celtics as a bet the other night. I'm not sticking my thumbs up after that game. I thought I had it in the bag. The Celtics were dominating for 2.5 quarters. Then all of a sudden stopped playing defense, and Cleveland got themselves right back into the game. Would you look at that game and say, yeah, it's what you expected to see? To me, it was for the first 2.5 quarters. Tatum obviously was an absolute monster, but I'm not necessarily in love with the end result when I was laying 5.5 points and I don't get my cover. What was your grand takeaway from Celtics and Cavs?
It was a spot for the Celtics to remind everybody, we're still sitting in the throne. We still got the chip. It's our banner hanging right over your heads, Cleveland. Congratulations on having a nice start to the season. But, the flag's right here. And I thought that they handled it pretty well. I honestly was more impressed with Cleveland's comeback than any other sort of aspect of the game because it showed a tenacity out of them. Mitchell ended up scoring 35 points, but they were extremely inefficient. He didn't have a good game shooting the ball from three, and he took, I don't know what the ultimate number was. It had to have been near 30 shots to get to his 30 points, 35 points. But the fact that they got it all the way down to where they did, and every bucket counts in the NBA Cup, fellas. It's a point differential tournament. So the fact that they were mindful of that's some Kenny Atkinson, discipline that to me bodes well for all of our Cleveland futures.
That game was like very frustrating for me because when you start the game off and Cleveland had a ton of injuries. I mean, you didn't have any of your wings. You didn't have Karis LeVert. You didn't have Isaac Okoro. You didn't have Max Strus. And this is a big-time matchup between the Boston Celtics, the defending NBA champions, and the Cleveland Cavaliers, who lost to them in the postseason last year. And you feel like this could be a great matchup, and you want to see both teams at full strength. And you know that there's one team coming into the game with one hand tied behind their back before it even starts. So that line opened Boston Celtics -4, and it got all the way up to Boston Celtics -7.5, to the point where if you bet Boston at an earlier number, you could have taken Cleveland at 7.5 and tried to middle the game. And interestingly enough, the way the game played out, because the Cavs were chasing point differential, none of the Boston numbers hit. So, just kind of a bad luck if you're on the Boston Celtics, but it tells you could try to shoot for those middles and you can get 20-1 on your money by laying, 1.1 on each side and essentially risking the juice to, win $2 or so.
This is where college basketball and me having a reference point can really help. I love Dalton Knecht at Tennessee. The Lakers got a steal in Dalton Knecht. My goodness, how did he fall that late in the draft?
It's funny. The conversation around him all season long was top 5 lottery pick. I mean, he was projected because he led the nation in scoring in a real program, in a real conference. And, he showed that scoring acumen. The draft ended up being so weird because all of the teams, ahead of the Lakers were in project mode, right? It's better to take somebody that we can try and develop and see if they turn into something, because of the overall quality of the draft. Teams didn't really have a need for a plug and play. Reed Shepherd to Houston was like the only plug and play that came in advance of Knecht. Knecht landed in exactly the right place with a team who needs exactly what he can provide. And I expect more of that, honestly, out of Knecht. That scoring acumen is crucial for that team. If D'Angelo Russell's going to keep coming off the bench and Reeves is, not going to be a prolific scorer at all. He's going to be an efficient scorer, but he's not a prolific scorer. I mean, good for the Lakers. They hit one. They nailed a draft pick.
Yeah, they definitely nailed the draft pick. And I mean, the reason he dropped is because Dalton Knecht is 23 years old. And for whatever reason, modern NBA, they feel like if you stay in school too long, there's a cap on your development. And I think it's the wrong way to look at it. I mean, when you look at the fact that, Rob Dillingham out of Kentucky was drafted number 8. And they traded him to the Minnesota Timberwolves. You look at the Minnesota Timberwolves, they're a team who needs that scoring off of their bench. And Rob Dillingham isn't playing at all. So they could have used a guy like Dalton Knecht. So, you look at the Lakers, they nailed that draft pick, but the Philadelphia 76ers, who came right before them, they drafted Jarrett McCain. And right now on FanDuel Sportsbook, he's plus 160 to win Rookie of the Year. So both of my favorite teams, the Philadelphia 76ers and the Los Angeles Lakers, they seem to nail the best 2 players in the draft thus far.
When we come back, we wrap it up with a bang. Almost as good as Dalton Knecht, Mr. McCain. Best bets, week 11. We got you covered. All right, before we say goodbye, best bet time. Week 11. Let's not get cute. Let's not reinvent the wheel. House, it's been a good couple of weeks for the teasers. I feel like you're going back in that direction. Best bets for the week.
I've got 2 teasers for you. You got to get a 10-point tease so you can play Washington laying 10.5 against Dallas, Kansas City laying 10.5 at Carolina. It's some books have 11. I think it's 10.5 on FanDuel. That's a 2-leg 10-point tease. And then on the 6-point tease, the Lions from 7.5 down to 1.5 is a must play. And then somehow the Denver Broncos are 6.5-point favorites at the Vegas Raiders. No. The only way you play that is on a tease. The Broncos down to 0.5, the Lions down to 1.5. That's the 6-point tease. Those are the best bets, Dream.
All right, I got 3. You already heard 2. I'm going Philadelphia Eagles minus 2.5 against the Rams. I'm going Seattle Seahawks plus 1.5 against the Arizona Cardinals. And I'm going to the greatest hits. I did this 2 Wise Guys episodes in a row. We're going to go with the Baltimore Ravens over 49.5 in the Hardball Bowl. I think you're going to get a lot of points in that game. You saw it last week against the Bengals, the Chargers. That offense is starting to get going. I think they're going to push the Ravens in this matchup. They didn't score last week against the Steelers, who have that voodoo. They're going to score this week. Give me the over there. That's 3 best bets.
I like it, Raheem. I got 2 coming your way. One is in the Sunday icky 1 o'clock window. I'm taking Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to lay the smackdown against the Giants. The Giant players are already questioning the move to bench Daniel Jones for Tommy DeVito. They know it's a business decision. Here's what I don't like about the Giants going into this game. They can't block. Tampa's going to blitz the you-know-what out of them. That's number 1. Number 2, Mike Evans is back. Mike Evans being back is an enormous deal for Baker Mayfield. I think he will have big plays in the passing game. I think this is a margin victory. Tease Tampa with everything, but I'll lay the 6. I think they win by 2 scores. The other one is to House's game that he mentioned, working in opposite direction. You're going to take Denver? That's fine. All they got to do is win the game. Fine by you. I'm taking the Raiders plus 6 against Denver. To me, Denver on the road should not be laying this amount of points. The Raiders moved the ball against Miami. They've been in a lot of these games. It's a matter of finishing. I don't know if they're going to finish this game. I just need them to keep it within a number. Division game, home dog, holding my nose. And boys, Simmons doesn't like when we go with small underdogs. He might be getting JJ to go and take the Raiders on the Ringer Sunday pregame. I'm not confirming that yet, but it is one of the 2 underdog
options.
Don't let him bully you.
Don't let him bully you, JJ.
Oh, man.
I'm not
he
going
to bully you right out of that lead. You still in the lead, right?
I am in the lead, but here's the difference, guys. Last week, I didn't like any of the big underdogs. This week, I like a couple of the big underdogs. So, it's a week-by-week basis. That's the way I approach it. So it's not bullying. It's a matter of, hey, surveying the field and the land and going and acting accordingly. So Raiders plus the points, Tampa laying the points. That's going to do it for our Week 11 bets. For House, Raheem, JJ signing off. We're back Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern for the Ringer Sunday pregame on FanDuel and YouTube TV. And then we'll be back with East Coast Bias on Monday. Be good, everybody.